There we go. Hi guys. Hi anyone watching later. We're gonna talk about Pesach, not Pesach, the time between Pesach and Shavuot, the Omer, and Shavuot. Hi, and some other biblical holidays. I personally love Shavuot. It's been my favorite holiday since I was a little kid. When I was like a child, it was my favorite holiday because my shul always had really yummy cheesecakes. These like little cheesecake bites that I was obsessed with as a kid. I'm still obsessed with them. They're really good. But now Shavuot is my favorite holiday for more reasons than just that. It's just a really incredible time where we get to celebrate getting the Torah and learning Torah. And like that's always been the part of Judaism that I naturally connected to the most, is learning Torah plus the Megillah, how do you say Megillah in English? Wow. The scroll, the book that we read on Shavuot, is Megillat Ruth. It's about the book of Ruth. It's I think the only book where like the two main characters are women. And there's a lot of dialogue between the two women. And it really is a story centered on women. So also from a very young age, I really loved the story. And find it really, really beautiful. And it's also like the origin of conversion. Ruth famously was the first convert. And we get a lot of ideas and laws and concepts about conversion from the book of Ruth, which we read on Shavuot, which is great. It's just a great book and a great story also. Okay. So between Pesach and Shavuot is this time that we're in now called Sefirat HaOmer. We are counting the Omer from the second day of Pesach until Shavuot every single night. You count, there's like a ritual to go, like a blessing and ritual to go along with it. And got the other thing I was to say about it. But it's usually people do it if they're praying, if they're davening Mariv during Mariv. I also know plenty of people, like my mom, who just say it at night, not during davening. And it's something that should be said at night. And it's also something that the mitzvah of it is to keep counting. So if you miss one day, then you can still count, but you can't do it with a bracha because the mitzvah of it is to like continuously count, if that makes sense. So like when we were kids, and even now too, it would be like a competition of like how far in can you get? And my school used to like give us prizes if you got like 10 days in and then 20 days in and so on. So that also was a really good incentive for me to like this time period. But also the first 33 days of the Omer are a period of mini mourning, somewhat mourning. We will that came later on. That is not biblical. That came in rabbinic times when Rabbi Akiva, it said that Rabbi Akiva had thousands of students die during this time. It was during the Bar Kokhba revolt, so it was during a pretty tumultuous time in Jewish history also. But the Talmud tells us that Rabbi Akiva's students died because they didn't respect each other. And they were, yeah, I mean, it literally, the words it says is like they were not respectful of each other. So then a plague came and killed many of them, maybe all of them, most of them, a ton of people. So during this period, traditionally people don't get haircuts, people don't get married, people don't listen to live music. Some people don't listen to any music with instruments in general, but my family's custom, and I think kind of the generally accepted modern Orthodox custom, is to just not listen to live music. And you don't really shave, but men can sometimes shave before Shabbat. I'm not 100% sure when, but I think it has to do with like looking nice for Shabbat. But besides that, men are not supposed to shave. But I think the two big things that or the three things that like are prominent about it for me are no haircuts, no live music, and no weddings. But I really also like in this story, I love this story of Rabbi Akiva. And how even after he had so many students die, the Talmud goes on to tell us, or rabbinic literature goes on to tell us that he went and found new students. And I think that's just a really incredibly beautiful thing, that Rabbi Akiva still had like the faith in humanity to he just had the faith that
Hannah, sorry to interrupt. Quick question.
all good. Please always interrupt.
So the period that we're in, which you said is Sefirat HaOmer, is rabbinic because of Rabbi Kiev. Am I saying his?
Okay, sorry. Sefirat HaOmer is biblical. We find the
Oh,
mitzvah for counting the Omer in the Torah.
okay.
But why it is a mourning period also is rabbinic.
Oh, so the morning piece is rabbinic, but the actual counting the Omer, that is biblical.
Yes.
Got it. And the morning piece is because of what happened with Rabbi Kiev
Yes.
and his students.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That was so good. Okay, thank you.
Of course. Please stop me if always interrupt me with questions. I love questions. So in Omer, what an Omer actually means is like a volume, a measurement of volume, um, a measurement of wheat that was brought on Shavuot as a sacrifice for God. And that was another, we also like rabbinically now say Shavuot is about celebrating Torah and getting the Torah. But in the Torah it's really talked about as the like festival of harvesting. And if you think about like the time it comes at, that like makes sense of like early June. Um I guess it's the time that like the first crops start popping up. So biblically it's really a holiday to celebrate the first crops coming. And thank God for that. So within that we give offerings of wheat, and that is where like the term Sefirat HaOmer comes from. So Lag BaOmer is the 33rd day of the Omer. That is like the day that we break the mourning period. So from day 34 to Shavuot, you can do those things. You can get your hair cut and you can um have a wedding and such. Um but it's
Hey,
also
Hannah,
become, yeah.
why 33? Does that mark something important or special or?
Um let's look at my Jewish learning. What I know of Lag BaOmer is that it's something that a lot of Hasidic Jews celebrate.
Mhm.
Um, um,
and had a lot of bonfires.
Mm.
For fun.
There are a few explanations of why we celebrate, but none of them are definitive. That's what I thought. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, so one of the things is um that the plague that was killing Rabbi Akiva's students
Mhm.
maybe stopped on Lag BaOmer.
Okay.
Um, so,
So the
uh,
plague basically was like 33 days. Is like
yeah,
that.
I think that's kind of the
Oh,
idea.
okay.
What people really do to celebrate it, how it's celebrated a lot in the modern day, um, is we celebrate Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who have any of you heard of him? Have either of you heard of him?
I have not.
There's a crazy story about him. Yes, this is how Lag BaOmer looks in Israel, um, or in a lot of parts of Israel. Hasidim really, really love Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Traditionally, it is thought of that he was the writer of the Zohar, which is like the Kabbalistic, the book that kind of starts Kabbalah. And a lot of Hasidic movements really, really, really love Zohar. Generally, modern Orthodoxy isn't as into learning Zohar, but some people totally are. It's just said to be like a very mystical book. I really have like almost no experience learning Zohar. But I would like to one day. And Zohar actually, it says in the very beginning that you can't learn it until you're 40 years old because it's so mystical that it'll like break your brain if you learn it too young. um, so yeah. So that is Lag BaOmer. A lot of people sorry, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was around during the time of the Roman um, rule. And during that time, Jews weren't allowed to learn at all. That was like one of the Roman decrees. But Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai decided to still keep learning. And the Romans found out. So then he was like a fugitive from the Roman army. And him and his son, also, this is like according to rabbinic tradition, go up to northern Israel and hide in a cave for 12 years, and just sit there and learn and learn and learn and learn and learn. And that's where people traditionally say the Zohar comes from. And then there's a story of after 12 years, he comes out and he sees, or his son, Elazar, sees a bunch of farmers working on Shabbat, like doing farming work on Shabbat. And he gets so angry that his eyes shoot laser beams on the farms and burn all the crops down. Because no one should be working on Shabbat. And God is like, chill, go back to the cave. You need to calm down. Like go back to the cave until you can like deal with humans again. So God sends them back into the cave for a year. And then when they come out, they are ready to kind of deal with humanity again. And deal with the fact that even though they spent 12 years learning, most people at the time had not spent that much time learning, and we're not that interested in learning or keeping mitzvot. I think most of, also like from rabbinic tradition, it seems that most Jews were very, maybe not happy to, but like okay going along with the Roman laws of the time that were seemingly trying to get rid of Judaism. And it is said that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's grave is on this mountain in northern Israel called Meron. It's kind of close to Tzfat. And so it's a very funny thing because like it's a very it's like a very rural area. There aren't so many people, and then there are tons of Hasidim who live in this on top of this mountain, Meron. And then there are also tons and tons and like hundreds of thousands of Hasidim come from all over Israel to Meron for Lag BaOmer, and they have this huge bonfire. And I hear it's very fun. I think it is much more fun for men than women. I haven't gone because it doesn't seem like women are allowed, but like I don't think women really participate in all of the festivities. So it never like felt like it was worth the schlep up for it. Plus I don't know. I don't like crowds of like 100,000 random Hasidic men. So they'll light a bonfire and then they'll just sing a bunch of Hasidic Kabbalistic songs. And there also is a tradition of not cutting your son's hair until he's 3 years old. Not totally sure where that comes from, to be honest, but you can look up, it's called an upshirim if you want to look it up on My Jewish Learning. It's a great resource. And some people try and have their son's first haircut at Lag BaOmer because it's like the first time you can cut hair after this mourning period also. Any questions about Lag BaOmer or the mourning period, or that was a lot of information. And like not the most important, like people like do celebrate Lag BaOmer, but like it's not a big thing. It's not like a holiday. Like maybe people have like a bonfire and a barbecue, and like hang out, but it's not like
I have a quick question. So is it all of the things that you would refrain from that you can do on Lag BaOmer, like weddings and like live music and
yeah, you can
everything?
do all the things. So I think that's also
Okay.
the celebration of Meron is there's like live music. I know some people get married on Lag BaOmer. Yeah, it's a break in the morning. And then also during Sefirat HaOmer, there's what's called Pesach Sheni, a second Pesach. It's a second chance for Israelites. It was a second chance for Israelites to bring a korban, an offering, for those who could not do it on Pesach itself. There are many reasons that people couldn't do it. I think this is actually a really cool example of one of the only times. I think this is a really cool example of like women being included. Of, you know, if a woman just gave birth, she wasn't able to go give the offering. If a woman had many kids at home, she wasn't able to go give the offering. So it's nice that like this second chance ended up giving everyone who wasn't pure a second chance to give a korban pesach, but also like women kind of were specifically, it benefited women specifically. Hi Rabbanit Bracha. Would you like to
Hi, Rabbanit.
1 second, trying to figure this out. Hi, everybody. Hi.
Hi.
Sorry to interrupt. I just got back from a trip. Can I interrupt everyone? Can you take a break now, or you want me to come back in?
No, we
Hannah.
can.
They can break?
Take a break now. Don't worry.
Uh-huh.
You want me to? Okay. We'll just start right back at. Shucks. Great. Okay, so that's Pesach Sheni. Do you have any questions on what Pesach Sheni is or means? It's not really practiced in the modern day, but some people like to just like mark the occasion. And I also know some more liberal denominations like to do something to kind of commemorate the Jews who generally are not included in things, which is pretty cool. But I don't know so much about that. Any questions on that? Okay, so to great. So just to summarize, there are 3 different reasons for Sefirat HaOmer that were given. Commemorating the deaths of Rabbi Akiva's students. Spiritually, it's this is what I think about when I think about Sefirat. We're counting the days from the Exodus from Egypt to receiving the Torah. Kind of the two of the biggest like events that made us a nation. Maybe the 2 events that made us a nation. So like, of course, we have to do something to like commemorate this time. Bnei Israel was really preparing themselves spiritually to receive the Torah and to have this incredibly the closest interaction people have ever had with God, to God, have this very, very close, intense interaction with God at Mount Sinai. So, there's a lot there. And also people give a lot of Kabbalistic reasons of like spiritual cleansing and also preparation for receiving Torah. I definitely think about it as like a time to prepare to receive Torah. I like to think about counting Omer as like kind of just like a practice in mindfulness, of like taking a moment every night to just like sit with myself and breathe. And that's something that I think in general people are very bad at like pausing sometimes and recognizing that like all of our lives are crazy busy and we still need to make time for ourselves, if we want to enjoy it and if we want to be successful and good and happy. So I like to think of, and like this time of year also always seems to be very busy. So I like to think of Sefirat HaOmer. I like to take it in like okay, this is every night at 9:30 p.m., whatever time. I'm gonna stop doing my homework. I finished what I finished, and everything else I will complete the next day, and take a second and count the Omer and kind of have this mindful moment with me and God. Any more questions on Sefirat HaOmer?
No.
Quick
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
So the spiritual cleansing, is that more in alignment with the Omer and reading the Omer and that kind of relationship that you're creating during that time, or is that something separate?
It's related to the Omer.
Okay.
Kabbalistically, there's an idea that like it makes sense that the Bnei Israel had to be kind of spiritually pure to receive the Torah.
Mhm,
So we're kind of trying to recreate this spiritual pureness,
mhm.
of like this, of being able to be that close to God. Does that make sense?
A little. How are we recreating it?
So Shavuot is remembering, is the celebration of receiving the Torah.
Yeah.
And receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai was the time that Bnei Israel had a very close interaction with, like, had a personal one-on-one interaction with God. So there are a lot of ideas of, the people had to be prepared to come face to face with God. The people had to kind of like do some inner work to be able to receive that.
Okay.
And today, for now, we live in a world where God's face is hidden.
Right.
And we don't really get to have those interactions for now until the Mashiach comes in our daily lives. But it's still nice to spiritually cleanse ourselves, to try and become closer with God. I think the idea behind it always is becoming closer with God. And that in remembering receiving the Torah, we also want to remember and re-strengthen and reinvigorate our relationship with God. But that's kind of that's more of the Kabbalistic kind of Hasidic and or hippy-dippy view of it. Not everyone is gonna say that that's part of it. Cool. So earlier I should have changed the formatting of this, but that's okay. We were talking about Rabbi Akiva and his students, and how the Talmud says that Rabbi Akiva's students died because they didn't respect each other. And what Rabbi Akiva is famous for is his line, "Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, ze klal gadol b'Torah." The most important concept in the Torah is love your neighbor as yourself. I can send you guys, there's like a silly, maybe not silly, but there's a song that people really like that go along with that says this. But there are a lot of reasons I admire Rabbi Akiva. And I think the biggest thing is that he really preached this Torah of love and loving your neighbor, and not only loving your neighbor who looks like you or acts like you or is like you, loving your neighbor, whomever that may be. And there's just something so amazing that even after all of Rabbi Akiva's students died, he was able to go on and find new students while simultaneously holding this super important principle of love your neighbor as yourself, and that is the most important principle in Torah. And also that Torah is super expansive and you should keep learning, and there's so much to learn from it. And that he was able to have the faith in humanity to really believe that he could find students who could hold both of those as true. I don't know. I think that's a really amazing thing about him. Yes. So another tidbit about Lag BaOmer is Josephus, who was a Jewish historian who wrote for the Roman Empire, says that Lag BaOmer also was the day that the revolt against Rome began, and that there was some victory against Rome on that day. So I guess the bonfires that are kindled today are kind of in memory of those, the victory that happened on that day against the Roman Empire. Okay, so back to Sefirat HaOmer, to the actual counting of the Omer. So, as I said before, we do it at night. And to say the bracha, we have to say it at night. During the day, you can still count and like still be in it for counting. But the mitzvah is just to count it at night, so you don't say the bracha of it. Yeah, so if you say the count of the day without a blessing, it counts, but you just don't say the blessing that day. So for example, if Saturday night I forgot to count the Omer, I could say on Sunday, today is the 20th day of the Omer. It wasn't, it was like the 24th, or something, I think. And if I say it kind of in the formulaic way that you're supposed to say it, then it still counts as counting, just not with the bracha. But then Sunday night, I could say it again with the bracha. But if you skip a day, like I said before, you can't say the bracha on it anymore. I think it's still worth it to count for all the spiritual reasons and such. But the actual mitzvah of it, the commandment of it, is to like continuously count the days. So once you kind of break one, then it doesn't, you can't continue. Cool. This is a nice graphic. I think the only part of this we didn't cover, which I didn't know this before I looked at the sheet, is that some say that Lag BaOmer was the day when the manna began to fall from heaven for the Jews in Egypt during the exile, during all the years in the desert. The Torah tells us that God provided manna for Bnei Israel, and provided this food, this sustenance from the heavens for Bnei Israel. And I guess there is an idea that started on Lag BaOmer, so that's definitely something to celebrate. Definitely. Okay, so that is it for Sefirat HaOmer, this time between Pesach and Shavuot. Any questions in general about Sefirat HaOmer? This time, anything I said in the last 45 minutes?
No question.
Okay. So now we are going to go on to talk about Rosh Chodesh and Shavuot, which are both things that happen. Well, Rosh Chodesh happens during the Omer, and Shavuot is the end of the Omer. Would you guys like to take a 3-minute break and then we can come back and do this, or do you just want to power through? Power through?
I'd be down to power through.
Okay. Oh, you do want to take a break? Okay.
It's okay.
We can take a 2-minute break. Does that work?
Yeah, we could take a full 3 minutes. I'm super neutral.
Okay. So we'll come back at 8:18.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Amazing. Welcome back. Share screen. So, we're going to talk about some of the biblical holidays. Now, sorry, I'm going to restart that sentence. Rosh Chodesh literally means the head of the month, the beginning of the month. It's a minor biblical holiday, and it's just celebrating the first day of the month. Sometimes it's 2 days because the way that lunar calendars work out is weird. but it's not like a Yom Tov. Work is allowed. Most people go into work. But you add extra praises of God into your davening, into your praying. You add an extra prayer service. So instead of 3, which happens on a normal day, you have 4. And you also add in Hallel, which is my favorite of all of the davenings. Hallel literally means praise. And it is a service that we say on holidays. That is just a bunch of psalms. I'm not gonna remember the numbers offhand, but it's, we go through a few psalms. And usually, I mean, a lot of times it's sung very nicely in groups. I don't know how often, if ever, you guys come to HIR. But if you get the chance to go to Hallel that is led by Rabbanit Bracha, I would really recommend that. She has a great voice and she's really good at all the musical things. And it's just really, really a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful service. That like really the only purpose of it is praising God. And it's just sung very nicely. Also, I think part of why I like it so much, also probably, is that it's one of the things that within Orthodoxy women can also lead. So a lot of times, like, there can be like women Hallels, like women to feel like women prayer services just for women of Hallel. And that can happen for other prayer services also. But Hallel is kind of the one that I think, I don't know, people think of when they think of like women's prayer services. And the one that like is the most widely accepted, that you can have women lead. So it's just like a really beautiful time. But like I really love those like female only spaces. Sometimes, most of the time. That you can just really, I don't know, there's a special energy to it that I really, really love. Part of that is also probably that Rosh Chodesh is kind of like said to be the women's holiday. That doesn't really have so many or any like tangible things. But it is said that because the women didn't participate in the making of the golden calf in the Torah during the time in the desert, that kind of our reward is that Rosh Chodesh is the day for women. The only thing I can think of in my life of like women, of like an example of Rosh Chodesh women things besides women's Hallel, is that a lot of times they'll do like women's learning on Rosh Chodesh, like just do things specifically for women, which can be really, really nice. It's like clear on Rosh Chodesh. Great. And just like everything else in the Jewish calendar, it can like it's always every like 28 or 29 days, but it's not like it's always on the same day of the solar calendar. It is when it is. Sometimes it's 2 days because the way that like biblically, and in rabbinic times, it was proclaimed when there was a new moon rabbis would proclaim that it was Rosh Chodesh, and they would blow shofar on the mountaintops, like from mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop, until every single community heard. And sometimes that can take a long time to happen. So sometimes it ends up being 2 weeks. Cool. So Shavuot, I think. We're not, you already talked about Pesach with Rabbi Bracha, yeah? Okay. So that's also a biblical holiday. But Shavuot is also their 3 kind of major holidays, major biblical holidays and major holidays, that are called the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 pilgrimage holidays, Shavuot, Pesach, and Sukkot. So you maybe have already talked about Sukkot, and we will talk about Sukkot or in the fall when that happens. But we just have Pesach and now Shavuot. So there are a few different ways that the Torah talks about Shavuot. Chag HaShavuot, which literally means the festival of the weeks. Because it is 7 weeks after Pesach. And all the like prohibitions of Yom Tov apply. Like Shavuot is a Yom Tov. So the prohibitions of Yom Tov apply, which are pretty similar, not exactly the same, but pretty similar to the prohibitions of Shabbat. So like the same way that any creative work is prohibited on Shabbat, creative work is prohibited on Yom Tovs, on holidays, except the biggest difference between Yom Tov and Shabbat is that on Yom Tov you can prepare food that you will eat that day, like on Yom Tov. So you know, a lot of times people won't necessarily cook the whole lunch for that day beforehand, but will, you know, like on Pesach, we just made omelets during one of the Yom Tovs. Because you can like leave a gas stove on, like very, very low, and then you can increase the flame. And you can cook. So that's fun. Is that clear? Does that make sense? We can go over also the difference between prohibitions for Shabbat and Yom Tov. Hopefully that can be a whole class on its own. But we can go over more of that later also. Cool. The other names for Shavuot in the Torah are Chag HaKatzir, which interesting, she translated as Festival of Reaping. I think I always thought of it as like Festival of the Harvest. But like we said before, Shavuot celebrates the harvest. It's the time of the first wheat harvest. And there's a special sacrifice of 2 loaves of bread made of wheat for the new harvest to give thanks. Sorry, to give thanks for the wheat and being able to harvest it. Chag HaBikurim is another one of the names for Shavuot. Yom HaBikurim, not Chag HaBikurim, which is the day of the first fruits. This is again in the with all of the harvesting. There are also certain fruits that bloom earlier, or I don't know if bloom is the right word, but you can harvest earlier. And some of these fruits are brought to the temple as a sacrifice too. to thank God for the harvest and also to remind us that this harvest comes from God. And then Sefirat is also talked about in Shavuot, which means stopping, which makes sense because we're stopping counting the Omer. And Zman Matan Toratenu, which means the time of the giving of our Torah. So this is used in some of the prayers, specifically for Shavuot, used in the festival Kiddush and in Amidah prayer, because again, it's the time that we celebrate getting the Torah. Any questions on the names of Shavuot? Or the meanings of the names of Shavuot, or what that, I don't know. No? Okay. Kind of a fun thing is we generally think of Shavuot. I always thought of Shavuot as the last of the three pilgrimage festivals because it's Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year, and then it's Shavuot, and then not Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, and then it's Sukkot, and then Pesach, and then Shavuot. But the Torah actually talks about Pesach being the start of the year and not Rosh Hashanah, which is maybe something we can talk about before Rosh Hashanah. So according to the Torah, this is the middle holiday, not the last holiday of the year. And I guess on Shavuot, we do all the normal holiday things. It is one day in the land of Israel and 2 days outside of Israel, like all the other holidays. We have like the same praying, the same prayers, the same davening, as we do on other holidays. And in the same way, have 4 prayers a day instead of 3, like we do on all the holidays. But there are a few things that are like specific to Shavuot. And these are, I don't know, what makes Shavuot so special to me. But we have a Tikkun Leil Shavuot, which is staying up all night to learn Torah. There are, I guess it's a tikkun. It's a trying to fix for when Bnei Israel fell asleep during Matan Torah, during the beginning of the Torah. Oh, interesting. This became a real custom when coffee was discovered. I believe that. But there also are stories actually in the Talmud, in the Gemara, about rabbis staying up and learning. And it's really, really fun. It's become like very normative in modern Orthodox circles to stay up all night. A lot of times shuls or just communities in general will have learning all night. For Shavuot in the past, like last year, I taught, I think at 11 p.m. and then again at 2 a.m. and then again at 5 a.m. On Shavuot night, which was kind of crazy. Fun, but the 2 a.m. slot was pretty hard to teach in. But like they're yeshivot and different shuls who will have programming all night. I'm from Cleveland, and in Cleveland they would have one big Tikkun Leil Shavuot for the whole community that went on all night, and they had team programming. Well, I think the team programming ended at some point, but when I was a teenager, we decided that we could stay for the whole thing. And it was always really, really exciting because that was like the only way that we could like stay up all night. And I remember the first year I tried to do it, I didn't make it all night. But then the next year I did. And like going home the next day, I was like falling asleep. but it can be really, really fun. I feel like most people now don't necessarily stay up all night. Like the custom is to stay up until Shacharit, until the morning prayers of the next day. I feel like a lot of people now will stay up until like 2 a.m. learning or something like that and then go to sleep. But there are, you know, always the people who want to stay up the whole time. My most meaningful Shavuot was one of the years I was living in Jerusalem. I had just completed my first, it's called a siyum. I had just completed learning my first tractate of Talmud. Which like there's kind of a custom and a ritual to go along with completing a whole tractate of Talmud. And the tractate I had just completed was called Chagiga, and is all about the pilgrimage festivals. And I completed it like maybe a week before Shavuot. And then I stayed up all night and went to a few different places in Jerusalem for Shavuot. And then at around like 4 a.m. I actually have no idea, but sometime around then, like everyone I was with decided that we were going to go walk to the old city. We were in an area called Talpiot in South Jerusalem, which is like a 40-ish minute walk from the old city. And we started walking to the old city, and it was like the whole city was walking up to the old city, and the old city is on a hill, so it literally is like walking up. And the closer we got, like the more people joined us, and it was just like this mass of people who were all exhausted and had been up all night, walking to the old city to go pray at the Shacharit, the morning prayer at the Kotel on Shavuot. And it was just like really kind of a magical spiritual experience for me. I really, really felt like the holiness of the day and the holiness of the city and the holiness of the people around me and the holiness of the Torah. It was really amazing. And if you ever get a chance to do something like that, you should. Yeah. I'm in Israel for Shavuot again this year, which I am excited about. I feel like now my friends are gonna be less interested in staying up all night and walking to the old city. Like when I did it, we were 21 and people thought it was more fun. But we'll see. I'll let you know. Maybe we will do that again. So any questions on Tikkun Leil Shavuot? It's not like a mitzvah. It's not like you have to stay up all night and learn. It's just the custom and the practice and something that I think is really beautiful. Cool. Another one of the customs is eating dairy. I said I liked it as a kid for the cheesecake. So I guess some say it's to remind us of the Israelites who ate dairy in the days leading up to Har Sinai, because they had yet to learn the laws of preparing kosher meat. Maybe. I feel like I'd been told another reason for the custom, but I honestly don't remember. But for me, it was always very fun because I'm a vegetarian.
This might be
Yeah.
this might be way off base. I'm having a vague memory of last year hearing that it was maybe something to do with Judah and like lulling people to sleep by like filling them up with dairy and making them like sluggish.
Maybe, because that is the story of Judith, that she lulled the king to sleep with a warm cup of milk. Maybe. I'm gonna look into that and let you guys know. That would be really cool. I love Judith. I think she's a really cool character. I mean, I love most of the characters, and I love most of the women, but Judith specifically is a really cool one. So we eat dairy on Shavuot. I feel like the custom has become a lot of blintzas. I don't know if that is a specifically Ashkenazi Jewish food, so I don't know if either of you guys have tried them before, but they're like little like they're like thin crepes filled with like sweet ricotta cheese that are really yummy. I feel like that and cheesecake are the two things that people like think of putting on Shavuot. But really,
I've tried, and I do think it is like an Ashkenazi specific thing. Just
Yeah.
based on I never had heard of them in my life until
Yeah,
meeting Alon's family.
nice. Okay, so I guess blintzas are Ashkenazi specific. They're very yummy though. Yeah, and it's like the only holiday of the year that you'll see like really from people, really Orthodox people, not eating meat necessarily. Um, I think is gonna be good. And also on Shavuot, the book we read is Megillat Rut. Which I talked about a little bit earlier, and is just like an incredible, incredible story, and is one of the only stories in the Bible that centers two women. So this book tells the story of Ruth, who was the first convert to Judaism, due to her like love and loyalty to her mother-in-law Naomi and her love of God. It takes place also at the time of the wheat harvest and refers to the mitzvah of leaving the corners of your fields unharvested for the poor to take, which is also associated with Shavuot. A little bit more about the story of Ruth. The story is that this woman, Naomi, had two sons, and both of them married women not from Bnei Israel. And then both of them died. And Naomi's husband died. So Naomi decided that she was going to go back to where her family was from, go back to the land of Israel. And her two daughters-in-law, she told them, like, you don't have, like, don't come with me. Like, you can go back to your families. Like, you don't have to feel any sense of obligation to be with me anymore. Like, I'm okay. And one says, okay, great, and goes back to her family. And the other, Ruth, stays with her and goes with her back to the land of Israel. And they have this journey of getting there and being completely destitute, and taking one of the really cool mitzvot in the Torah is to leave the corners of your fields unharvested so the poor can come and take. Just as like an assurance that people don't go hungry. I think we could learn a lot from that in our modern society. And so Ruth and Naomi go to one of these fields and take from the unharvested that is left for the poor, and meet this man named Boaz. And it's the story of Ruth and Naomi kind of settling into living back in Bnei Israel and back in the land of Israel. It's just really beautiful. It's really like there aren't so many. I think of it as like a love story between Ruth and Naomi, not a romantic love, but just a like motherly, daughterly love. And I don't think we have too many of those stories. I think society in general loves to tell romantic love stories as like the love stories. Well, like there's so many types of love, and it's really, really beautiful to me that we get a whole book dedicated to like mother-daughterly love. and like women's love for each other and women taking care of each other. That's it. Any questions about the Yilat root or any of the minhagim for Shavuot? Cool. We're almost done. I'll probably take like 5 more minutes. So the Torah talks about kind of holidays in 3 categories, Shabbat and Yom Kippur, where all of the 39 malachot, all of the 39 types of work are forbidden. Cooking is forbidden, carrying without an eruv is forbidden, heating liquids is forbidden. I hope you have talked about Shabbat before, and I'm sure you have, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about Shabbat. But Yom Kippur falls into that category with all of the prohibitions of Shabbat. And then we have these festivals, Sukkot, Shavuot, Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, which are more lenient than Shabbat, because the Torah says that we are supposed to like increase our pleasure on these days. So the laws are a bit more lenient so we can enjoy the days and increase our pleasure more. The place where that is the place where that matters the most is in food. Like I said earlier, you can cook. With cooking, you also can transfer a flame, which also is just really helps with cooking, and I'm sure also in olden days really helped with having light. So like you'll see people like take like a little Hanukkah candle and light it from one candle and then light the next candle, or take a Hanukkah candle and light it from a candle and then light the stove or something like that. And so that's one of the prohibitions on Shabbat that is allowed on holidays. And also like the actual act of cooking itself is forbidden on Shabbat, and that is allowed on holidays. So you can cook anything you want. You can leave the oven on a low temperature, and then depending on the oven, maybe turn it up, because you can transfer fire. And cook a lot. So that's fun. And you also don't need an eruv to carry. I guess so. I never thought of this, but so that we can enjoy our meals with others. So like you'll see in the city, people will go to like parks that are outside of the eruv for holiday meals that they couldn't go to on Shabbat. Like my friends who live in Brooklyn, Prospect Park is out of the eruv, so people wouldn't go to Prospect Park to have like a picnic meal on Shabbat, but on Shavuot they could, which is just nice. And Rosh Chodesh, like we talked about before, is a minor holiday. Work is allowed, but we just have extra prayers. This also is important. To be able to cook, you have to make an erev tavshilin, which means mixing of the cooking, the cooked dishes, and allows us to prepare and heat food for Shabbat. Oh, sorry. You don't need an erev tavshilin just on if it's just a festival, but a lot of times, or just sometimes, we can have Shabbat right after a festival. So to be able to make food for Shabbat on the holiday, you do this erev tavshilin thing, where you take like a baked food. I feel like I always saw it with a hard-boiled egg in my family, but I don't think that it can be with anything, any baked food. Oh, and a cooked food before the festival begins, and we say a special blessing on them. You can find it in the Siddur. And then those foods are saved to be eaten at the end of Shabbat, which is probably why my family would use a hard-boiled egg, because that like doesn't go bad. So that's a very important thing to do if it is a 3-day, what we call a 3-day Yom Tov, holiday and followed by Shabbat, where you want to cook for Shabbat during the holiday. So it would be a lot to have to like cook for 3 whole days beforehand. So it's really nice to be able to.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you just repeat, just in a nutshell, what you're talking about when you're saying the mixing of cooked dishes? Is this only supposed to be done during the festivals?
So this only has to be done when you want to cook for Shabbat on the festivals.
Okay,
Because on the festivals, you are allowed to cook. On Shabbat, you are not allowed to cook.
right,
But on the festivals, you are specifically allowed to cook for the festivals.
right. And if
Like you shouldn't just
Shabbat's
like cook
coming up,
some.
then you can, and if Shabbat's coming up,
Yes.
then you do this for
Yes.
Shabbat.
And then you can
Okay,
for Shabbat.
Okay.
That makes sense? Cool. Okay. Any questions on prohibitions of festivals or Erev Tavshilin or anything we talked about in general?
Any questions?
no questions.
No questions.
Okay, great. So then we are done for the night. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening.
Good class. Thank you for a good class.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great.
Of course, of course, of course. And if you have any questions, you can find my email on the email you got tonight or contact Rabbi Bratha. I know we are both always happy to answer questions.
Perfect. And are you a rabbini in training?
Yes.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
I